In a quiet town where summer dreams taste like fresh lemonade, the Devil's Riders saw an easy mark in 10-year-old Ethan's sidewalk stand. They thought intimidation would be simple here, like everywhere else. What they didn't count on was Ethan's father, Nathan Williams. The town knew him as a supportive single dad, always watching from the sidelines with his morning paper. They didn't know that behind his quiet smile lay the man who'd led the Navy's most elite SEAL teams through missions that would never see daylight. When the bikers decided to teach a lesson by destroying a child's dream, they made a mistake that would haunt them forever. Because sometimes the most dangerous men are the ones who choose to live in peace, and Nathan Williams is about to show them why his former targets still wake in cold sweats remembering the shadow that hunted them in the dark. The Devil's Riders are about to learn that messing with a father's son comes with a price, and it's always collected in full. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The summer sun cast long shadows across Main Street as 10-year-old Ethan Williams meticulously arranged a row of plastic cups on his freshly painted lemonade stand. His bright blue eyes sparkled with determination while his small hands moved with careful precision, adjusting each cup until it aligned perfectly with its neighbors. The stand itself was a testament to dedication, a sturdy wooden construction that he and his father had spent weekends crafting together. Every plank had been carefully sanded, every nail precisely hammered, and every surface lovingly painted in cheerful shades of yellow and blue. Hand-drawn signs adorned the stand, showcasing Ethan's special flavors in his neat, practiced handwriting. Classic Sunshine featured prominently in the center, flanked by Berry Blast and his crowning achievement, Mint Meadow Surprise. Each sign included little artistic flourishes, sun rays, berries, and mint leaves that Ethan had spent hours perfecting. A gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of fresh lemons from the preparation area, where several pitched had been pre-made. Ethan had risen at dawn to squeeze dozens of lemons, his small hands working the juicer while his father supervised. The mint leaves floated in ice cube trays, frozen into crystalline blocks that would add both flavor and visual appeal to his signature drinks. "Looking sharp there, buddy," Nathan Williams called out as he approached the stand, his muscular frame casting a long shadow across the sidewalk. Despite wearing casual summer attire, khaki shorts and a navy blue t-shirt, there was an unmistakable military bearing in his posture. 15 years as a Navy SEAL had left their mark, evident in everything from his alert gaze to his measured stride. "Thanks, Dad," Ethan beamed, adjusting his self-made Chief Lemonade Officer badge, a creative touch he'd added using his mother's old craft supplies. "I incorporated all your suggestions about customer service. The ice is crushed, just right. The cups are lined up for easy access, and I even made a special holder for the napkins." Nathan's weathered face softened into a proud smile. "You've got quite the operation here, son. Remember what we talked about regarding team dynamics?" "Yes. Just like your SEAL team had specific roles and backup plans, I've got everything organized, so I can serve customers quickly and efficiently." Ethan's voice carried the enthusiasm of someone who had found their calling. "I've even got a backup supply of ice in the cooler, just in case we get really busy." The morning light strengthened as Main Street began to wake up. Shop owners unlocked their doors, early bird customers strolled along the sidewalks, and the smell of fresh coffee wafted from the nearby diner. Ethan's stand, positioned strategically near the intersection of Main and Oak, caught the eye of many passers-by. Mrs. Thompson from the bookstore was the first to approach, her silver hair neatly styled and her kind eyes crinkling with interest as she examined the menu. "Well, what do we have here? This looks absolutely delightful, Ethan." "Would you like to try our special of the day, Mrs. Thompson? The Mint Meadow Surprise is my own recipe." Ethan straightened up, remembering his father's lessons about professional bearing. His small hands worked confidently as he prepared a sample cup, making sure to add one of his special mint-frozen ice cubes. Mrs. Thompson took a sip and her eyes widened with genuine pleasure. "My goodness, this is extraordinary. The mint gives it such a refreshing twist. I'll take 2 large cups, please." As Ethan carefully filled the orders, Nathan watched from a nearby bench, a newspaper spread across his lap more for show than actual reading. His trained eyes continuously scanned the street, an old habit that had saved his life more than once during his service years. A group of children from Ethan's class pedaled up on their bikes, creating a small traffic jam of youngsters eager to sample his wares. Jenny Parker, her brown pigtails bouncing with excitement, was the first to reach the stand. "This is amazing, Ethan. Did you build all this yourself?" "My dad helped with the construction," Ethan explained, gesturing proudly to the solid wooden frame. "But I designed everything else. I'm saving up for that new bike at Wilson's Sporting Goods. You know, the blue one with the silver racing stripes." The children gathered around, examining the stand with obvious admiration. Tommy Anderson, still straddling his red bicycle, pulled out his allowance money. "I'll try the Berry Blast. Mom says these are better than any lemonade she's ever had." The peaceful scene shattered as a deep rumbling filled the air. The sound of multiple motorcycles approaching caused the children to turn their heads in unison. Nathan's posture shifted instantly, the newspaper lowering as his body tensed with recognition. A group of bikers thundered down Main Street, their chrome pipes gleaming in the morning sun. Their leather vests displayed patches and insignias that spoke of a different kind of brotherhood than the one Nathan had known in the SEALs. At their head rode a man whose mere presence commanded attention: Vince Marshall. Vince slowed his bike as he passed the stand, his dark sunglasses reflecting the summer sun. His head turned deliberately toward Nathan, a sneer playing across his face as their eyes met. The moment stretched, heavy with unspoken history, before Vince gunned his engine and led his group away, leaving behind a cloud of exhaust and tension. Nathan's jaw clenched, his hands gripping the newspaper tight enough to crease the pages. The look they'd shared carried weight, recognition, history, and something darker that made his combat-trained instincts fire warning signals through his nervous system. "Wow, those bikes were really loud," Ethan commented, already returning his attention to his customers. "But look, Dad, I've already made $20 this morning. At this rate, I'll have enough for the bike in no time." Nathan forced his muscles to relax, deliberately smoothing out the newspaper as he pushed away the shadows that threatened to surface from his past. "That's excellent, kiddo. Keep up the good work." The morning mellowed into afternoon, and Ethan's stand became a neighborhood sensation. Old Mr. Jenkins, who owned the hardware store down the street, brought his grandchildren by, regaling them with tales of his own childhood lemonade venture. "Course, back in my day, we charged a nickel a cup," he chuckled, dropping an extra $1 in Ethan's tip jar. Sarah Martinez, the local mail carrier, made the stand her official break spot, praising the Mint Meadow surprise as the perfect pick-me-up for her long route. Even Officer James Thompson pulled his patrol car over, causing a minor sensation among the younger customers who gathered to admire his badge and radio. "Your boy's got a real gift for business," Mrs. Baker commented to Nathan as she enjoyed her second cup of classic sunshine. The retired school teacher had always had a soft spot for ambitious students. "We need more young entrepreneurs like him in this town." Nathan nodded, his pride momentarily overshadowing the unease that had settled in his stomach since the biker's appearance. "He's got big dreams, that's for sure, and the determination to match." Throughout the afternoon, Ethan's natural charm worked its magic on the community. He remembered everyone's names, took special requests for future flavors, and even started a suggestion box for new recipes. His notebook filled with orders for office parties and upcoming events, each entry carefully recorded in his best handwriting. "Dad, look," Ethan exclaimed during a quiet moment. "Mrs. Johnson from the flower shop wants 3 pitchers for her garden club meeting next week, and Mr. Peterson asked if I could set up a stand at the summer festival." Nathan helped Ethan note down the details, making sure he understood the importance of reliable service. "Remember, son, in business like in the military, your word is your bond. If you promise something, you deliver." As the sun began its descent, casting orange and pink streaks across the sky, Ethan counted his day's earnings with methodical precision. His small fingers sorted the bills carefully, his lips moving silently as he added up the total. $73, Dad, and that's not counting the advance orders for next week. "I'm proud of you, son," Nathan said, helping Ethan pack up his supplies for the day. "You showed real leadership today, Taking initiative, solving problems, treating people with respect. That's how you build something that lasts. Ethan carefully stored his money in the special box his father had given him, a repurposed military ammunition container that had been cleaned, painted, and fitted with a new lock. The box represented everything Ethan admired about his father. Strength repurposed for peace, protection transformed into possibility. "Do you think tomorrow will be even better?" Ethan asked, his voice full of hope as they loaded the last of the supplies into their truck. "I was thinking maybe we could try some new flavors. Mrs. Thompson said she has fresh lavender in her garden that she'd be willing to share." Nathan listened to his son's excited plans, smiling at his enthusiasm while part of his mind worked on a different problem. He had recognized something in Vince's look earlier, something that spoke of unfinished business and old scores. The kind of look he'd seen too many times in his military days, usually right before things went sideways. But watching Ethan's animated face as he described his dreams for expanding the stand, Nathan made a silent promise. Whatever ghosts lurked in his past, whatever storms gathered on the horizon, they wouldn't touch his son's summer of lemonade and hope. He'd make sure of that, just as surely as he'd once ensured his team's safety in far more dangerous situations. As they drove home in the gathering dusk, Ethan clutched his money box and grinned out the window, already planning tomorrow's adventures. "Thanks for everything, Dad. For helping me build the stand, for teaching me about business, for everything. Tomorrow's going to be amazing. I can feel it." Nathan's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel, but his voice remained steady and warm. "You bet it will, buddy, you bet it will." The traffic light ahead turned red, and as they waited, a distant motorcycle engine echoed through the streets. Nathan's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, years of training automatically assessing potential threats. But the sound faded away into the evening air, leaving behind only the peaceful sounds of a small town settling into night. Beside him, Ethan hummed happily, jotting down ideas in his notebook for tomorrow's flavors, blissfully unaware of the storm clouds gathering on their horizon. Nathan glanced at his son, then back to the road ahead, his jaw set with determination. He'd faced down threats before, weathered storms that would have broken lesser men. Whatever came next, he'd face it with the same resolve that had carried him through his SEAL missions. The light turned green, and they drove on through the quiet streets of their town, the setting sun painting everything in soft shades of gold. In the back of the truck, Ethan's lemonade stand stood ready for another day of dreams and determination, while in the distance, the rumble of motorcycles grew fainter and fainter, like thunder moving away before the storm. The morning sun had barely cleared the horizon when Ethan's lemonade stand was already drawing attention. Word had spread through social media and local chat groups about the enterprising young boy with his creative flavors, bringing curious customers from neighboring towns. As Ethan prepared for another busy day, he couldn't help but smile at how his small business had grown in just a week. The stand now boasted a professional-looking chalkboard menu, a gift from Mrs. Thompson who insisted it would add a touch of sophistication to his enterprise. Ethan had spent an hour that morning carefully writing out his expanded menu, which now included Strawberry Sunset and Peach Paradise, alongside his original offerings. "Looking good, son," Nathan said, helping Ethan set up the day's supplies. His eyes continuously scanned the street, a habit that had intensified since the biker's appearance last week. "Remember to keep your earnings secure in the lockbox between customers." "Got it, Dad." Ethan nodded, arranging his signature mint leaf ice cubes. "Mr. Peterson from the bank said he's bringing his whole office staff by today. They ordered 2 pitchers of classic sunshine." The morning bustled with activity as Ethan served a steady stream of customers. His natural charm and attention to detail earned him plenty of repeat business, with many customers commenting on how his lemonade brightened their day. Even the local news website had featured a small article about him, dubbing him Main Street's youngest CEO. Around noon, the familiar rumble of motorcycles filled the air. Nathan, who had been chatting with Officer Thompson nearby, immediately tensed. The bikes approached slowly this time, deliberately intimidating as they circled the block before pulling up near the stand. Vince dismounted first, his leather vest creaking as he approached. 2 other bikers flanked him, a tall, tattooed man who introduced himself as Snake, and a shorter, stockier one who remained silent. Their presence cast a shadow over the cheerful stand, causing nearby customers to step back uneasily. Well, Vince drawled, removing his sunglasses to reveal cold gray eyes. Heard this was the best lemonade in town. Thought we'd give it a try. His voice carried a mocking tone that made Ethan's smile falter slightly. Welcome to fresh squeezed dreams, Ethan said, maintaining his professional demeanor despite his discomfort. Would you like to try our special of the day? It's strawberry sunset. Snake laughed, the sound harsh and artificial. Strawberry sunset? Ain't that precious? He exchanged knowing looks with his companions. Sure, kid. Give us 3 cups of your finest. As Ethan carefully prepared their drinks, Nathan watched from his position near Officer Thompson, his body coiled with tension. He recognized the predatory way the bikers moved, their staged casualness masking darker intentions. Vince took a long sip of his lemonade, making a show of considering the taste. Not bad, kid. Bit sweet for my taste, though. He set the cup down and leaned forward, his presence looming over the stand. How's business been? Making good money? It's been good, thank you, Ethan replied politely, trying to focus on serving other customers who were waiting nervously nearby. Good to hear, Vince smirked. Successful businesses in this town tend to attract attention. Sometimes they need protection. He emphasized the last word, his meaning clear to everyone within earshot. Nathan stepped forward, his movement subtle but purposeful. Everything okay here, son? Vince's eyes locked onto Nathan, recognition and animosity flickering across his features. Well, if it isn't the hero himself. Still playing protector, Williams? He picked up the jar of freshly made lemonade sitting on the counter. Nice setup you've got here. Be a shame if anything happened to it. That's not for sale, Ethan protested as Vince tucked the jar under his arm. Please put it back. Consider it a sample for my friends, Vince replied, dropping a crumpled dollar bill on the counter. We'll be back to check on things. Make sure you're doing well. His tone carried the weight of a threat. The bikers mounted their motorcycles, Vince carefully balancing the stolen jar. As they roared away, he called back over his shoulder. Stay sharp, Williams. Some debts don't stay buried forever. The incident left a heavy silence in its wake. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he picked up the crumpled dollar, his earlier confidence shaken. Nathan approached the stand, placing a steadying hand on his son's shoulder. You handled that well, buddy, he said softly. Sometimes people try to intimidate others because they're jealous of their success. Officer Thompson walked over, his expression concerned. Want me to file a report about the stolen merchandise, Nathan? Not necessary, James, Nathan replied, his voice low. Not yet anyway. He turned to Ethan, who was trying to restore order to his disrupted display. Why don't you take a short break, son? Get some lunch? But Ethan shook his head, straightening his Chief Lemonade Officer badge. The Peterson order is due in 20 minutes, Dad. I need to get it ready. Nathan watched proudly as his son returned to work, impressed by his resilience. Yet beneath his calm exterior, his mind was already analyzing the threat. He recognized the tactics. Start small, create fear, escalate gradually. It was a pattern he'd seen before, both in combat zones and civilian life. Later that afternoon, as the summer heat began to fade, Nathan spoke with Tom Wilson, the owner of the local hardware store. Those bikers been causing trouble for anyone else? Tom glanced around before answering, his voice hushed. They've been showing up at small businesses all over town, started about 6 months ago. Most folks pay them to avoid problems. Nobody wants to be the first to stand up to them. And the police? Without concrete evidence of extortion, their hands are tied. These guys are smart. They know exactly how far they can push without crossing legal lines. Nathan absorbed this information, his military training kicking in. Every threat had weaknesses. Every enemy had vulnerabilities. He just needed to find them. As the day wound down, Ethan counted his earnings with less enthusiasm than usual. Dad, he asked quietly. Did I do something wrong? To make those men angry? No, son, Nathan replied firmly. You did everything right. Some people they carry darkness inside them. But you keep shining your light. That's the best way to fight the darkness. That evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Nathan sat at his desk, reviewing mental notes from the day's encounter. Vince's comment about debts nagged at him, stirring memories of a failed mission years ago. He'd recognize Vince immediately. They'd served together briefly before things went wrong. The next morning, Ethan insisted on opening the stand as usual. I can't let them scare me, Dad, he said, his young face set with determination. You always say that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when you are afraid. Throughout the day, the community rallied around the stand. Mrs. Thompson brought cookies to share with customers. Officer Thompson increased his patrols past the corner. Even Mr. Peterson ordered extra lemonade for his afternoon meeting, declaring it the official drink of summer. Nathan maintained his careful watch, noting how Vince's visit had changed things. Customers looked over their shoulders more often. Parents kept their children closer. The carefree atmosphere of the first week had been tainted by an undercurrent of tension. During a quiet moment, Nathan caught Ethan staring at his lockbox with concern. What's on your mind, buddy? I was thinking, Ethan said slowly. Maybe I should keep some money aside, just in case those men come back and want protection money. The word sounded wrong coming from his innocent mouth. No, Nathan said firmly. We don't give in to bullies, son. That only makes them stronger. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. But it might be smart to think about security. Maybe we could install a camera, keep better records of our customers and sales. As they packed up that evening, Nathan noticed Ethan adding extra locks to his supply boxes. The sight stirred something deep within him. Pride mixed with anger that his son had to learn such lessons so young. Later that night, Nathan made some calls to old contacts, gathering information about Vince and his gang. The picture that emerged was troubling. A pattern of intimidation across several towns, always staying just within legal boundaries, always targeting small businesses that couldn't afford to fight back. He also learned about Vince's dishonorable discharge, the result of the same failed mission that still haunted Nathan's dreams. But while Nathan had emerged with his honor intact, Vince had chosen a darker path, letting bitterness twist him into something dangerous. The next morning, as they set up the stand under a sky promising another scorching day, Nathan watched his son with a mixture of pride and concern. Ethan had already adapted, positioning his stand to ensure clear sightlines in all directions, keeping his valuable supplies secured between sales. Dad? Ethan's voice pulled Nathan from his thoughts. Do you think they'll come back? Nathan considered, lying, offering comfortable reassurance. But he remembered his SEAL training. In uncertain situations, honesty could be the difference between life and death. They might, son. But remember what I taught you about situational awareness? Ethan nodded solemnly. Always know your surroundings. Have an escape route. Trust your instincts. That's right. And remember, you're not alone. This whole community has your back. As if to prove his point, Mrs. Baker arrived with her grandson in tow, both wearing t-shirts bearing hand-painted lemons. We're your official fan club, she announced, making Ethan laugh for the first time since the incident. Throughout the day, Nathan observed the subtle changes in his son. Ethan's smile remained bright, his service impeccable, but there was a new awareness in his eyes. He watched the street more carefully, kept his earnings more secure, stayed more alert to his surroundings. It pained Nathan to see his son's innocence eroded, even slightly, but he also recognized the strength emerging, the kind of resilience that couldn't be taught, only earned through facing adversity. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across Main Street, Nathan helped Ethan close up shop. The day's earnings were good despite the lingering tension. Customers had made a point of showing their support, some leaving extra tips with encouraging notes. Dad? Ethan asked as they loaded the last supplies into their truck. Are you worried? About what Mr. Vince said about debts? Nathan paused, weighing his response. In the SEALs, we had a saying, the only easy day was yesterday. It meant that challenges make us stronger, as long as we face them with courage and integrity. Ethan considered this, his young face thoughtful. Like how you always say that lemonade tastes better because we squeeze every lemon by hand? Exactly like that, buddy. Nathan smiled, marveling at his son's ability to find simple truth in complex situations. The hard way is usually the right way. As they drove home through the quieting streets, Nathan's trained eyes continued their constant surveillance. He knew Vince's type. The first incident was just a test, a way to gauge their response. The real challenge was yet to come. But watching Ethan review his day's notes, already planning improvements to his stand's security while maintaining his commitment to customer service, Nathan felt a fierce pride. His son was learning valuable lessons about strength, resilience, and the importance of standing up for what's right. The upcoming battle with Vince and his gang wouldn't be fought with fists or weapons, but with courage, community, and the unshakable determination of a young boy who refused to let fear dim his dreams. And Nathan would be there every step of the way, protecting, guiding, and teaching, just as he'd done in countless missions before, but now for the most important mission of all, preserving his son's spirit while helping him grow stronger. The pre-dawn darkness blanketed Main Street in shadows as 3 motorcycles glided silently through the empty streets, their engines barely more than whispers. Vince led his crew toward Ethan's lemonade stand, which stood vulnerable in the pale glow of a nearby streetlight. The bikers worked with practiced efficiency, their dark figures moving like wraiths in the night. Hours later, as the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, Ethan bounded down the front steps of his house, eager to start another day at his stand. His enthusiasm faltered when he saw his father's expression. Nathan stood by their truck, his phone in his hand, his face grim. "Dad?" Ethan's voice wavered. "What's wrong?" "Buddy," Nathan began, his tone gentle but serious. "Something happened last night. We need to go check on the stand, but I want you to be prepared. It's not good." The drive to Main Street felt longer than usual. When they turned the corner, Ethan's sharp intake of breath broke the morning silence. His beloved lemonade stand, the product of countless hours of work and dreams, lay in ruins. The wooden structure had been partially demolished, its carefully painted panels splintered and broken. Crude graffiti covered what remained of the walls. "Stay down," sprayed in aggressive red letters across the front. Shattered glass from mason jars littered the ground, mixed with spoiled lemons and trampled mint leaves. Ethan's hand-painted signs lay torn and scattered, and his special chalkboard from Mrs. Thompson had been smashed to pieces. "No," Ethan whispered, his voice small and wounded. He approached the wreckage slowly, as if hoping it might somehow transform back into his cherished stand. His hands trembled as he picked up a fragment of his Chief Lemonade Officer badge, now broken and muddied. Nathan surveyed the damage with the calculated gaze of a military veteran, noting details that others might miss. Boot prints in the soft earth, cigarette butts still carrying a hint of warmth, a broken motorcycle chain link half hidden beneath the debris. His jaw tightened as he pulled out his phone to document everything. Officer Thompson arrived minutes later, his patrol car's lights casting blue and red shadows across the scene. "Jesus," he muttered, taking in the destruction. "Nathan, I'm so sorry. We had patrols through here at midnight, but they must have waited." "They knew the patrol schedule," Nathan replied grimly. "This was planned." A small crowd began to gather as word spread. Mrs. Thompson arrived, her hand covering her mouth in shock. Mr. Wilson from the hardware store shook his head in disgust. Even Mr. Peterson from the bank showed up, his usual business attire replaced by casual weekend clothes. Ethan stood in the middle of it all, trying to salvage what he could from the wreckage. His movements grew increasingly desperate as he uncovered more destruction. His recipe book soaked and ruined, his special ice cube trays crushed, his lockbox dented though, thankfully still secure. "Why?" he finally asked, looking up at his father, with tears in his eyes. "Why would they do this?" Nathan knelt beside his son, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. Sometimes, buddy, people do cruel things because they're afraid of seeing others succeed. They try to tear down what they can't build themselves. As Nathan comforted his son, he noticed something partially hidden beneath a broken plank. Carefully, he retrieved a leather wallet, expensive, but weathered. Inside, he found no ID, but there was a distinctive military challenge coin, one he recognized from his SEAL days. His eyes narrowed as he discreetly pocketed the item, his mind already connecting the dots. Mrs. Baker approached with her grandson Tommy, both carrying brooms and trash bags. "We're here to help clean up," she announced firmly. "This is not how our town treats its young entrepreneurs." Others joined in, forming an impromptu cleanup crew. Mr. Wilson returned with a wheelbarrow and tools. The local coffee shop sent over hot chocolate and coffee for the volunteers. Even Officer Thompson stayed beyond his shift, helping to clear debris while taking detailed notes for his report. As they worked, Nathan shared a quiet word with Officer Thompson, showing him the wallet he'd found. "This isn't just random vandalism. James, they're sending a message." "The coin, you recognize it?" Nathan nodded grimly. "It's from a specific unit, one I served with briefly, one where Vince and I crossed paths." Meanwhile, Ethan moved through the wreckage methodically, his initial shock giving way to a quiet determination. He carefully collected every undamaged jar, every salvageable piece of wood, making neat piles of what could be reused. "Dad," he called out, his voice stronger now. "Remember how you said the SEALs always had backup plans? I think I need one now." Pride mixed with concern in Nathan's chest as he watched his son's resilience emerge. "That's right, buddy. In the SEALs we learned that it's not about whether you get knocked down, it's about how you get back up." Sarah Martinez, the mail carrier, paused her route to join the cleanup effort. "You know, Ethan, my brother works at the lumber yard. I bet he could get us some materials at cost, maybe even deliver them today." The community's response continued to grow throughout the morning. Jenny Parker's parents, who owned the local print shop, offered to make new signs free of charge. Mrs. Thompson promised a replacement chalkboard, bigger and better than the first. Mr. Peterson spoke quietly with other business owners about setting up a security camera network along Main Street. As Nathan helped clear away the last of the debris, he noticed Ethan sitting on the curb, staring at his ruined recipe book. The pages were water-damaged, the careful notes and creative flavor ideas barely legible. Nathan sat beside him, remembering similar moments of loss and rebuilding from his military days. "Want to hear a story?" he asked softly. Ethan nodded, clutching the damaged book. "During my SEAL training, we had this exercise called surf torture. We had to lie in the freezing ocean for hours while instructors tried to break our spirit. Most guys focused on their own suffering, but my team? We started singing, horrible off-key singing." Nathan smiled at the memory. "It drove the instructors crazy, but more importantly, it showed us that together, we could turn any situation around." "Like how everyone's helping us now?" Ethan asked, looking around at the volunteers. "Exactly. The bikers thought they could break your spirit, but look what happened instead. They made it stronger by showing you how many people believe in you." A truck from the lumberyard arrived, Sarah's brother Jeff hopping out with a wide grin. "Heard someone needs building materials. I brought the good stuff. Pressure-treated lumber, weather-resistant paint, the works." Ethan's eyes widened as he saw the quality of the materials. "But Dad, can we afford all this?" Before Nathan could respond, Mr. Peterson stepped forward. "Consider it an investment in one of our town's most promising businesses. We take care of our own here." Throughout the afternoon, the rebuilding effort took shape. Nathan's military precision proved invaluable as he coordinated the volunteers, ensuring every piece of new construction was stronger than before. They reinforced the base, added hidden compartments for secure storage, and installed subtle but effective security measures. Ethan worked alongside everyone, his initial devastation transformed into focused energy. He redesigned his stand with improvements he'd been dreaming about, a better display case for his flavors, a more efficient serving station, even a small awning for shade. As the sun began to set, the new stand stood proud and tall, a testament to community spirit and resilience. Fresh paint gleamed in the evening light, and new signs declared, "Fresh Squeezed Dreams," with even more creativity than before. Mrs. Thompson stepped back to admire their work, her arm around Ethan's shoulders. "You know what they say, dear. When life gives you lemons, make better lemonade," Ethan finished, managing a small smile. "And better friends." After the volunteers had gone home and the tools were packed away, Nathan and Ethan stood alone before the rebuilt stand. The streetlights flickered on, casting warm pools of light around them. "Dad?" Ethan's voice was thoughtful. "Do you think they'll come back?" Nathan considered his son's question carefully. In his pocket, the military coin seemed to weigh heavily, a reminder of unfinished business. "They might, buddy. But this time, we'll be ready. I was scared when I first saw what they did," Ethan admitted. "But now I'm just angry. They tried to destroy something good, something that makes people happy. That anger? It's natural. But remember what we talked about. Channel it into something positive. Make your stand better. Serve more customers. Show them that their meanness can't stop your kindness." As they prepared to head home, Nathan noticed something in his son's expression. A new kind of strength, tempered by adversity, but not hardened by it. Ethan had learned difficult lessons today about cruelty and courage, about loss and rebuilding. Back home that evening, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, carefully rewriting his recipes in a new book. Each entry was meticulously copied, with small improvements noted in the margins. His face showed intense concentration as he worked, determined to preserve and enhance everything he'd created. Nathan watched while cleaning his old service pistol, a habit that helped him think. The wallet he'd found weighed on his mind. The challenge coin was specific to a classified operation, one that had gone terribly wrong, one that had ended Vince's military career and nearly cost Nathan his life. Later, after Ethan had gone to bed, Nathan made several calls to old contacts. The responses painted a disturbing picture. Vince's gang had been escalating their activities across several towns, becoming bolder with each success. They'd created a network of intimidation and fear, carefully staying just beyond the reach of law enforcement. But they'd made a mistake this time. The wallet was physical evidence, and the military coin connected their actions to Vince's past. Nathan knew that sometimes the smallest details could unravel the largest operations. His SEAL training had taught him to exploit every advantage, no matter how slight. As midnight approached, Nathan stood at his window, watching the quiet street below. In the distance, a motorcycle engine growled, then faded away. He thought about Ethan's determination to rebuild, about the community's immediate response to help, about the strength that emerges from adversity. Tomorrow, they would reopen the stand. Ethan had already planned special comeback cookies to thank their supporters, refusing to let fear dim his entrepreneurial spirit. The stand would be stronger, the security tighter, the community more vigilant. But Nathan knew this wasn't over. Vince's attack wasn't just about a lemonade stand. It was a message, a challenge, a reopening of old wounds. The destroyed stand was merely the opening move in a game that had started years ago in a desert halfway around the world. As he finally prepared for bed, Nathan remembered something his SEAL commander once told him. The greatest victories often come disguised as defeats. Today, Vince had meant to break their spirit. Instead, he'd only succeeded in strengthening it, bringing the community together in ways he never anticipated. Nathan made a silent promise as he drifted off to sleep. He would protect his son's dreams, not just with physical security, but by showing him that courage and kindness could overcome any adversity. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they would face them together, backed by a community that refused to be intimidated. In his room, Ethan slept peacefully, his new recipe book clutched to his chest, dreams of tomorrow's reopening filling his head. The darkness that had tried to extinguish his light had only made it shine brighter, illuminating the best in their community and revealing the strength within himself. The rebuilt lemonade stand gleamed in the early morning light, its fresh paint and reinforced structure a testament to community resilience. Nathan sat in his home office, the military challenge coin from the wallet turning slowly between his fingers as his laptop displayed personnel files he'd pulled from his private SEAL archives. The screen showed a younger Vince Marshall in desert camouflage, standing with their unit before everything went wrong. Nathan's research had revealed an unsettling pattern. After his dishonorable discharge, Vince had spent years building his network of intimidation, starting with small towns in the Midwest before moving east. Each location showed the same progression: minor incidents escalating to property damage, then threats, and finally full control through fear. A knock at his office door interrupted his thoughts. Ethan stood there, already dressed for the day, his new recipe book clutched in his hands. "Dad, I had some ideas for new offerings at the stand. Maybe we could add some breakfast items? Mrs. Baker said she'd teach me how to make her famous blueberry muffins." Nathan quickly minimized the files on his screen, turning to face his son with a warm smile. "That sounds great, buddy. Why don't you show me what you're thinking?" As Ethan excitedly shared his plans, Nathan marveled at his son's resilience. Just days after the vandalism, here he was, not just rebuilding, but expanding. The incident had shaken him, but hadn't broken his entrepreneurial spirit. "And look," Ethan continued, opening his recipe book to a fresh page. "I created a new lemonade flavor. I'm calling it Phoenix Rising, because, like the bird that rises from the ashes? It's got a hint of cinnamon and star anise. Mr. Wilson from the hardware store let me experiment with spices in his break room yesterday. That's clever, son. Really clever." Nathan's pride mixed with concern as he watched Ethan sketch out his ideas. He knew Vince wouldn't stop with vandalism. The challenge coin in his pocket was proof. This was personal. At the stand later that morning, business was booming. The community had rallied around Ethan even more strongly after the attack, with people making special trips just to show their support. The new Phoenix Rising lemonade proved especially popular, its unique flavor and meaningful name resonating with customers. "This is absolutely inspired," Sarah Matthews commented as she sampled the new drink. Her family's antique store had also faced harassment from the bikers months ago, though she'd never reported it. "The whole town's talking about how you bounced back, Ethan. You're setting quite an example." Nathan observed the interaction while pretending to read his newspaper, his trained eyes constantly scanning for threats. Sarah lingered after Ethan moved on to other customers, her voice dropping low as she addressed Nathan. "I've been meaning to talk to you about Vince and his gang," she said quietly. "There's something you should know. My brother-in-law works at the garage where they get their bikes serviced. He's heard things, concerning things." Nathan lowered his paper slightly. "What kind of things?" "They're planning something big. Not just here, all across the county. Some kind of coordinated effort to establish protection territories. But Vince seems particularly focused on this town. On you." "Any idea why?" Sarah hesitated. "Just one thing. He has a nephew in foster care, a boy about Ethan's age. I think watching your relationship with Ethan triggers something in him. Reminds him of his own failures." This new information clicked into place in Nathan's tactical assessment. Vince's nephew, a vulnerability perhaps, or at least a key to understanding his psychology. He made a mental note to investigate further. The morning crowd thinned as lunchtime approached. Ethan was restocking his supplies when a familiar rumble filled the air. This time, it was just Vince alone, his motorcycle gleaming in the sunlight. As he pulled up to the stand, Nathan tensed, but remained in his position. They'd discussed this possibility, how to handle direct confrontation while maintaining appearance of normalcy. Ethan straightened his apron, his young face composed, despite his obvious anxiety. "Welcome to Fresh Squeezed Dreams," Ethan said, his voice steady. "Would you like to try our new Phoenix Rising lemonade?" Vince removed his sunglasses, his cold eyes taking in the rebuilt stand. "Phoenix Rising, huh? Cute name. Guess your daddy helped you come up with that one?" His gaze shifted to Nathan. "Always was good at rising from the ashes, weren't you, Williams?" "The name was my idea," Ethan replied firmly. "Would you like to try it?" "Sure, kid. Pour me a cup." Vince placed a $5 bill on the counter, his movements deliberately slow. Nice job rebuilding. Must have had a lot of help from the community. Shame if anything happened to their businesses, too. Nathan stood, his movement casual but purposeful as he approached the stand. Everything okay here, son? Vince's smile didn't reach his eyes. Just having a friendly conversation about community support. You remember the importance of community, don't you, Williams? Back in Kandahar? Oh, wait, you left that community behind, didn't you? That was a long time ago. Vince, things are different now. Are they? Vince took a long sip of the lemonade, his eyes never leaving Nathan's. Interesting flavor. Cinnamon, star anise. Reminds me of that tea we used to drink with the locals, before everything went to hell. He set the cup down carefully. Your boy's got talent, Williams. Be a shame if he had to learn how quickly. Dreams can turn to nightmares, like your old team learned. Nathan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained level. My son's stand is off limits, Vince. Whatever is between us, it stays between us. Nothing's off limits in war, Williams. You taught me that. Vince mounted his motorcycle, the engine roaring to life. Tell your community friends to mind their own business. This town's changing. Better to be on the right side when it does. After Vince rode away, Ethan looked at his father. Dad? What did he mean about Kandahar? Nathan sighed, knowing it was time for some truth. Let's take a break, buddy. There are some things I need to tell you. They sat on a bench near the stand, the summer breeze carrying the scent of lemons and fresh-baked muffins. Nathan chose his words carefully, balancing honesty with age-appropriate details. Vince and I served together in Afghanistan. There was a mission that went wrong. Bad information, bad timing. We lost good men. Vince blamed me for making a call that he disagreed with. He was discharged afterward, and I guess he never let go of that anger. Ethan absorbed this information quietly. Is that why he's targeting my stand? Because he's angry at you? Partly. But I think it's more than that. Sometimes people who are hurting try to hurt others. They think it will make their pain less, but it never does. Later that afternoon, Nathan received a call from an old SEAL, teammate, Marcus Reynolds, now working in private security. Got your message, Williams. Did some digging on your boy Vince. He's been busy since Kandahar, built himself quite the operation. Tell me, multiple states, organized protection rackets, but smart about it. Keeps everything just legal enough to avoid serious attention. But here's the interesting part. His nephew, Tommy. Kid's in the system, but Vince has been trying to get custody. Keeps getting denied due to his record. Nathan thought about Sarah's earlier comment. The nephew. That's why he's so focused on Ethan. Seeing what he can't have? Probably part of it. But watch your back, Nathan. Word is he's calling in favors, gathering his crew for something big. Whatever went down in Kandahar, he's not letting it go. After ending the call, Nathan began formulating a plan. His SEAL training kicked in, assess the situation, identify vulnerabilities, prepare contingencies. He started making notes in his tactical journal, the same one he'd used during his service years. Ethan's voice called from outside. Dad, come quick, you need to see this. Nathan rushed out to find Ethan staring at his phone. A local news website was running a story about a string of vandalism incidents across the county. All small businesses, all refusing to pay for protection. The pattern was escalating. They're hurting other people too, Ethan said softly. Because of us? Because we rebuilt? No, buddy. They're hurting people because that's what bullies do. But sometimes it takes one person standing up to them to help others find their courage. That evening, as they closed up the stand, Nathan noticed Sarah approaching again. She glanced around before speaking. I found out where they're operating from, an old warehouse on the edge of town. My brother-in-law overheard them planning something for next week. Multiple targets. Nathan nodded, adding this to his mental map of the situation. Thank you, Sarah, but be careful. Don't put yourself at risk. After Ethan went to bed that night, Nathan spread his tactical maps across his desk. The warehouse location was strategic, multiple escape routes, good visibility of approaching vehicles. Vince was still thinking like a soldier. He began making calls to other local business owners, quietly building a network of allies. Mr. Wilson agreed to install security cameras covering the street approaches. Officer Thompson arranged for subtle increases in patrol frequency. Even Mr. Peterson at the bank offered to review security footage from their ATMs. As midnight approached, Nathan stood at his window, watching the quiet street below. In his hand, he held the challenge coin from the wallet, his key piece of evidence linking Vince to the vandalism. But he knew it wasn't enough. Vince was too smart, too experienced to be taken down by a single piece of evidence. The sound of a distant motorcycle caught his attention. Through his tactical binoculars, he observed two of Vince's men conducting surveillance of the neighborhood. They were planning something, probably for the weekend when the street would be busiest. Nathan's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Intel confirmed. Big movement planned. Multiple crews coming in from other states. Whatever he's planning, it's soon. The pieces were falling into place. Vince wasn't just fighting for territory anymore. He was making a statement. The lemonade stand had become a symbol of resistance, inspiring other businesses to stand up to his intimidation. He couldn't let that continue. But Nathan had his own plans forming. His years as a SEAL had taught him that the best defense was often a subtle one. Direct confrontation wasn't always the answer. Sometimes, the key was to let the enemy think they had the upper hand while quietly positioning for the real battle. He began drafting a message to his old SEAL team members who were still in the area, not asking for help, not yet, but ensuring they were aware of the situation. Good men who understood the importance of protecting innocence from those who would destroy it. A soft knock at his office door interrupted his planning. Ethan stood there in his pajamas, looking younger than his years. "Dad, I had a bad dream. About the stand, about Vince." Nathan pulled his son into a hug, feeling the slight tremor in his small frame. "Want to help me with something?" He pulled out his tactical planning notebook. "In the SEALs, we learned that the best way to deal with fear is to prepare. Want to help me make our stand even stronger?" Ethan nodded, settling into the chair beside his father. Together they began marking potential security improvements on a diagram of the stand. Nathan explained basic tactical concepts in terms his son could understand, watching as Ethan's fear gradually transformed into focused determination. "See this area here?" Nathan pointed to the stand's layout. "In the military, we call this a choke point. It's where we can control how people approach." "Like making sure everyone has to come to the front counter?" Ethan asked, catching on quickly. "Exactly. And these sightlines, they give us clear views in all directions. No one can surprise us if we stay alert." They worked together until Ethan's eyes began to droop. As Nathan carried his sleeping son back to bed, he felt the weight of both pride and responsibility. Tomorrow, they would implement their improvements. The stand would be ready. But more importantly, Ethan was learning valuable lessons about courage, preparation, and the importance of standing up to intimidation. The very things Vince sought to destroy, hope, innocence, community, were being strengthened by his attacks. Nathan returned to his office, adding final notes to his tactical journal. The challenge coin gleamed on his desk, a reminder of past battles and the one to come. But this time, he wasn't fighting for a military objective. He was fighting for his son's right to dream, to build, to succeed without fear. Dawn was approaching as Nathan finally closed his journal. In a few hours, they would open the stand again. Vince and his men would be watching, planning their next move. But now Nathan had a plan too, one that would end this conflict not with violence, but with the same quiet strength that had helped a young boy turn a simple lemonade stand into a symbol of community resilience. The weekend crowd bustled along Main Street, drawn by the perfect summer weather and the growing legend of Ethan's lemonade stand. The Phoenix Rising flavor had become something of a local symbol, its success a reminder of the community's resilience. Nathan watched from his usual spot, noting how his son handled the rush of customers with growing confidence. Security cameras discreetly tracked movement from multiple angles, their presence known only to a select few. Mr. Wilson's hardware store provided coverage of the western approach, while the bank's ATM cameras monitored the east. Nathan's military training recognized the tactical advantage of this surveillance network, though he hoped they wouldn't need it. The rumble of approaching motorcycles cut through the cheerful atmosphere. This time it wasn't just Vince. He'd brought his entire crew. 8 bikes rolled down Main Street in formation, their engines deliberately loud, chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun. The crowd parted instinctively, parents pulling children closer, shoppers ducking into stores. "Stay behind the counter," Nathan said quietly to Ethan, who nodded with understanding beyond his years. They'd drilled for this scenario, practiced, keeping calm under pressure. The security measures they'd implemented were about to be tested. Vince dismounted first, his leather vest bearing new patches, signs of his expanding territory. Snake and 2 other bikers flanked him, while the rest spread out in a practiced pattern that Nathan recognized from military operations. They were establishing a perimeter, controlling the space. "Quite the crowd you've got here," Vince called out, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet street. "Business is booming, I see. Must be nice having the whole town's support." Ethan maintained his professional demeanor, though Nathan could see his son's hands trembling slightly. "Welcome to Fresh Squeezed Dreams. Would you like to try our Phoenix Rising lemonade?" "Phoenix Rising?" Vince smirked, approaching the counter. "Keep rising from the ashes, don't you? Just like your old man. Always thinking you can rebuild, start fresh." His eyes locked onto Nathan. "But some things don't wash away so easy, do they, Williams?" Nathan moved closer to the stand, his movements casual but purposeful. Years of combat training had taught him to read situations, anticipate threats. The bikers were positioned for intimidation, but also for quick action if needed. "Is there something specific you want, Vince?" Nathan's voice remained level, controlled. "Just checking on my investment in the local economy." Vince gestured to his crew. "My associates and I are very interested in small businesses, their protection, their future prospects." The crowd had thinned considerably, though some brave souls remained, watching from what they hoped was a safe distance. Officer Thompson's patrol car rolled by slowly, deliberately visible. One of the bikers muttered something into a radio clipped to his vest. "Your concern for local business is noted," Nathan replied, his tone carrying a subtle warning. "But this stand is protected." "Protected?" Vince laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "Like you protected our unit in Kandahar? Like you protected Mitchell and Rodriguez?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You remember them, don't you, Williams? The men we lost because of your call?" Nathan's jaw tightened, but he held his ground. "That's not what happened, and you know it. The intel was bad. We all made decisions that day." "Decisions?" Vince's face darkened. "You left them behind. Left me behind. And now you're playing family. Man, community hero?" He turned to address the remaining onlookers. "You want to know about your hero? Ask him about the men he abandoned. Ask him about the lives he destroyed." One of the bikers, a heavily tattooed man Nathan hadn't seen before, moved toward the stand's money jar. His hand reached out, quick and practiced, but Ethan was quicker. The jar disappeared beneath the counter, secure in one of the hidden compartments they'd installed. "Don't!" Nathan's voice carried the full weight of his SEAL training. The biker hesitated, looking to Vince for direction. "Still giving orders, Williams?" Vince sneered. "Still thinking you're in charge?" He leaned over the counter, addressing Ethan directly. "Your dad's good at playing hero, kid, right up until the moment you really need him. Then, he runs." "My dad never runs." Ethan's voice was quiet but firm. "He taught me that standing up to bullies is more important than being afraid of them." A flash of something, pain perhaps or envy, crossed Vince's face. "Brave words, kid, but bravery doesn't count for much in the real world. Ask Tommy about that." "Tommy?" Ethan's confusion was evident. "Your nephew?" Vince's expression hardened. "Who told you about Tommy?" His gaze snapped to Nathan. "Been doing your research, Williams? Digging into my personal life? You brought this to my doorstep, Vince, to my son's business. Did you think I wouldn't investigate? Wouldn't prepare? Prepare?" Vince laughed again, but there was an edge to it now. You've got no idea what's coming. This little stand, these security cameras you've got hidden away. You think that's protection? He gestured to his crew. Show them what real protection looks like. The bikers began moving with practiced coordination. Two approached the stand from different angles while others maintained their perimeter. Nathan recognized military-style tactics. They'd practiced this. Last chance, Williams, Vince said quietly. Tell your community friends to back off. Tell them to pay what they owe. Or next time we won't be so gentle. There won't be a next time, Nathan replied, his voice carrying the same quiet authority that had once commanded SEAL teams. You want to talk about Kandahar? Let's talk. But leave my son and this town out of it. Vince's hand moved to his vest, and for a moment, Nathan tensed, ready for anything. But Vince merely pulled out a handful of crumpled bills, tossing them onto the counter, for the lemonade, and a down payment on what's coming. He turned to leave, then paused. You know what the difference is between us, Williams? I learned from Kandahar. I learned that loyalty means nothing, that everyone leaves eventually. But fear? Fear stays. Fear works. Fear isn't loyalty, Vince. Look around. These people aren't standing with us because they're afraid. They're here because they believe in something better. Better? Vince spat the word. There is no better. There's only power and those two. Weak to take it. Your boy's going to learn that lesson just like Tommy did. The comparison to his nephew seemed to trigger something in Vince. His next words carried real venom. You think you can protect him? Like you protected our men? I'm going to show him what you really are, Williams. Show everyone. One of the bikers moved suddenly, knocking over a display of cups. The crash made everyone jump, and in that moment of chaos, another biker grabbed at the cash box visible on the counter. But it was a decoy. The real money was safely hidden. Nathan moved with the speed and precision of his SEAL training, placing himself between the bikers and Ethan. His stance was defensive but ready, and something in his expression made the bikers pause. Enough, Vince commanded, though his eyes showed approval of the chaos. We've made our point. For now. He mounted his bike, the engine roaring to life. See you soon, Williams. You and your boy both. The bikers departed in the same formation. They'd arrived in, their engines deliberately loud, their presence leaving a wake of tension and fear. As they disappeared around the corner, the street began to come back to life. People emerged from stores. Conversations resumed in hushed tones. Ethan's hands were shaking as he picked up the scattered cups. Dad? What did he mean about Tommy? About Kandahar? Nathan helped his son clean up, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes people who are hurting try to hurt others. They think it will make their pain less. Vince. He lost someone he cared about, someone he was supposed to protect. He blames me, but really, he blames himself. His nephew? Tommy's had a hard life. Vince wants to help him but can't. Seeing us together, it reminds him of what he's lost. Officer Thompson approached the stand, his expression concerned. Want to file a report about this incident? We had cameras rolling the whole time. Not yet, Nathan replied. But keep the footage safe. We might need it soon. As the afternoon wore on, customers returned, many making a point to buy extra lemonade to show their support. Mrs. Thompson brought fresh cookies. Mr. Wilson installed additional security lights. The community's response to intimidation was to draw closer together. Later, as they were closing up for the day, Sarah approached with news. My contact at the garage overheard something. They're planning something big for next week. Multiple crews coming in from out of state. Nathan nodded, adding this information to his mental tactical map. Thank you, Sarah. Be careful with what you share, and watch out for yourself. That evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Nathan received a call from Marcus. Got some intel on Tommy, his old teammate reported. Kids in a group home in Bedford County. Vince has been trying to get custody, but his record keeps getting in the way. Here's the thing, though. Tommy's caseworker? She's been reporting harassment, intimidation attempts. He's pushing from all angles. Nathan mused. The custody, battle, the protection racket, the personal vendetta, it's all connected. Watch your back, Nathan. Word is he's calling in favors from other chapters. Whatever he's planning, it's bigger than just your son's stand. After ending the call, Nathan checked his security feeds. 2 of Vince's men were parked at the end of the street, watching the house. They were being more obvious about their surveillance now, wanting to be seen, wanting to create anxiety. Nathan's tactical mind was already formulating plans, considering angles of approach, points of vulnerability. But this wasn't a military operation. He couldn't treat it like one. These were civilians, his neighbors, his community, his son, caught in the crossfire of an old military grudge. A soft knock at his office door revealed Ethan, unable to sleep. "Dad, I've been thinking about what Vince said, about Tommy. What about it, buddy? Maybe that's why he's so angry. Because he can't help Tommy like you helped me. Because he can't be a good dad like you." Nathan pulled his son close, struck by the wisdom in his words. "You might be right, but that doesn't excuse what he's doing. I know. But maybe understanding why helps us figure out how to stop him. You always say that in the SEALs, understanding your opponent was as important as being stronger than them." Pride mixed with concern, as Nathan recognized the truth in his son's observation. Vince's actions weren't just about territory or power. They were about loss, about failure, about a man who couldn't protect the one person he felt responsible for. As midnight approached, Nathan made more calls, reaching out to trusted contacts, building a network of support. He knew Vince's attack today was just a prelude. The real confrontation was coming, and he needed to be ready. But as he watched Ethan finally drift off to sleep, Nathan realized something important. The strength they needed wouldn't come from tactical plans or security measures. It would come from the very thing Vince had lost, the bonds of family, community, and trust that no amount of intimidation could break. Tomorrow, they would open the stand again. They would serve lemonade, share smiles, build connections. And in doing so, they would demonstrate a truth that Vince had forgotten. True strength isn't found in fear, but in the courage to remain kind in the face of cruelty. The distant rumble of motorcycles echoed through the night, a reminder that the confrontation was far from over. But Nathan felt more prepared now, not because of his military training, but because of what his son had taught him about resilience, about understanding, about the power of maintaining humanity in the face of hatred. This wasn't just about protecting a lemonade stand anymore. It was about showing Vince and Tommy and everyone else that there was always a better way. That fear might control people temporarily, but hope could inspire them forever. The abandoned warehouse loomed against the darkening sky, its weathered walls illuminated by the glow of motorcycle headlights. Nathan observed from his concealed position, noting the increased activity around the building. Sarah's intel had been accurate. This was definitely Vince's base of operations, and something big was brewing. Through his tactical binoculars, Nathan counted 12 bikes parked, outside more than double Vince's usual crew. Out-of-state patches glinted on leather vests as riders came and went, carrying supplies and weapons into the building. His military training recognized the signs of preparation for a major operation. His phone vibrated silently. A text from Marcus. "Bedford County Group Home reports Tommy's missing." Vince made his move. Nathan's jaw tightened. The situation was escalating faster than expected. Taking Tommy from the group home crossed a line. It transformed this from a local intimidation campaign into something far more serious. He needed to act soon, before Vince's desperation pushed him to do something irreversible. Back at the lemonade stand, Ethan worked with quiet determination, unaware of his father's surveillance operation. He'd created a new sign thanking the community for their support, his artistic touch adding colorful lemons and stars around the border. Sarah kept watch while Nathan was away, her presence both protective and reassuring. "Your dad's going to fix this," she told Ethan as he served customers. "He understands Vince better than anyone." "I know," Ethan replied, carefully counting change. Dad says sometimes people do bad things because they're hurting inside, like Vince with Tommy. The wisdom in his son's words echoed in Nathan's mind as he continued his surveillance. The warehouse's security was professional, but predictable. Regular patrols, standard entry points, typical blind spots. Vince was still thinking like a soldier, falling back on his military training. Movement near the building's side entrance caught Nathan's attention. A young boy, maybe 12 or 13, peered out briefly before being pulled back inside. Tommy. The sight confirmed Nathan's fears. Vince had brought his nephew directly into the conflict. Nathan's phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Officer Thompson. "Just got word from state police," the officer reported quietly. "They're monitoring the situation but won't move without solid evidence. The missing person report on Tommy isn't enough. His uncle's name is still on his paperwork as an emergency. Contact. How long will they wait? 24 hours minimum, but Nathan, there's more. We've got reports of biker gangs moving in from 3 neighboring states. Whatever Vince is planning, it's happening soon." Nathan ended the call, his tactical mind processing the information. The pieces were falling into place. Vince was gathering forces for a show of strength, using Tommy's situation as both motivation and justification. The longer Nathan waited, the stronger Vince's position would become. As dusk settled over the warehouse district, Nathan made his move. He approached openly, hands visible, projecting confidence rather than aggression. The guards tensed but didn't stop him. They'd been expecting this. Inside, the warehouse had been transformed into a makeshift command center. Maps covered the walls, marking territories and targets. Nathan recognized his son's lemonade stand, among them, along with other businesses that had resisted the gang's demands for protection money. Vince stood at a central table, surrounded by his lieutenants. Tommy sat in a corner, trying to appear tough but clearly uncomfortable with the situation. The boy's resemblance to Ethan struck Nathan. Same age, same vulnerable determination to prove himself. "Bold move, Williams," Vince said without looking up. "Walking in here alone." "Bold move yourself," Nathan replied, "taking Tommy from the group home. That's kidnapping, Vince. No coming back from that." "Kidnapping?" Vince laughed harshly. "I'm his family. Only family he's got left. Systems broken, Williams, just like everything else in this town." The other bikers moved to surround Nathan, but Vince waved them back. This confrontation had been brewing for years. It deserved space. "Tommy deserves better than this," Nathan said quietly. "Better than being used as a pawn in your vendetta." "Used?" Vince's voice cracked with genuine emotion. "I'm trying to protect him, like I tried to protect our men in Kandahar, like you failed to protect them." The old accusation hung heavy in the air. Nathan saw Tommy listening intently, saw the way the boy's eyes darted between them. "Tell him the truth, Vince. Tell him what really happened that day. How the intel was bad. How we all made decisions that cost lives. Tell him how you abandoned your post to try a solo rescue, how that forced my hand." "Lies!" Vince slammed his fist on the table. "I tried to save them while you played it safe, while you followed protocol and left them to die. Is that what you tell yourself?" Nathan's voice remained steady. "Is that how you justify all this? The intimidation, the violence, the fear? Is this what Tommy needs to see?" Tommy stirred in his corner. "Uncle Vince? What's he talking about?" Vince's expression flickered. "Stay out of this, Tommy. This is about honor, about loyalty." "No," Nathan countered. "This is about guilt. About a man who couldn't save his teammates, couldn't protect his family, and turned that pain into anger. But it's not too late, Vince. Not for Tommy. Not for you." Some of the other bikers shifted uncomfortably. They'd signed up for a protection racket for easy money and the thrill of intimidation. This was different, darker, more personal. "You're poisoning them against me," Vince snarled. "Just like you poisoned the town, making me look like the villain while you play the hero with your son's perfect little lemonade stand. This isn't about heroes and villains, Vince. This is about choices. The same choice we faced in Kandahar. Do we let fear drive us to make things worse? Or do we find the courage to make them better? Tommy stood up, his young face troubled. Uncle Vince, you said we were just going for a ride. You said the group home agreed. The boy's words hit Vince like physical blows. Nathan saw the conflict in his former teammate's eyes. The desperate need to prove himself warring with the knowledge that he was failing the one person he truly wanted to protect. It's complicated, Tommy, Vince started, but the boy cut him off. Is it? Like Kandahar was complicated? Mr. Williams is right. You're using me, just like you're using these guys. He gestured to the bikers. Making everyone afraid doesn't make you strong. It makes you like the people who hurt Mom. The comparison staggered Vince. Nathan saw the exact moment something broke in his old teammate's expression, the instant when justifications and anger gave way to raw truth. I couldn't save her, Vince whispered, and Nathan knew he was talking about Tommy's mother, his sister. I was deployed when she needed me, when you needed me. I promised myself I'd never fail family again. But you are failing him, Nathan said gently. Every moment you keep him here, every act of intimidation you force him to witness, you're failing the very person you're trying to protect. Several of the bikers were openly uncomfortable now. Snake, Vince's lieutenant, spoke. Boss, maybe we should rethink this. The kid's got a point. Shut up. Vince's control was slipping. All of you shut up. I built this. I created something from nothing. I made people respect us. No, Tommy said quietly. You made them fear us. That's not the same thing. Nathan watched the power dynamic shift in the warehouse. Vince's carefully constructed authority was crumbling, built as it was on fear rather than true loyalty. The out-of-state bikers began drifting toward the exits, sensing that this had become something personal, something they hadn't signed up for. It's not too late, Nathan repeated. Tommy needs his uncle. Not a gang leader, not an avenger, just his uncle. The man who used to write him letters from deployment, who taught him to ride a bike, who wanted to give him a better life. Vince's shoulders sagged, the weight of years of anger and guilt finally becoming too heavy to bear. I don't know how, he admitted. I don't know how to be anything else anymore. Yes, you do. Nathan stepped forward, careful to keep his movements non-threatening. The same way you taught Tommy to ride that bike, one step at a time with patience and care. Start by taking him back to the group home. Start by showing him that doing the right thing takes more courage than doing the wrong thing. Tommy moved to stand beside Nathan, his presence a silent testament to the truth of those words. One by one, the remaining bikers followed Snake's lead, stepping back, creating space for what had become a family matter rather than a gang confrontation. They'll never give me custody now, Vince said, his voice hollow. After taking him like this. Maybe not, Nathan agreed. But you can still be in his life. The right way. Show him the uncle he needs, not the tough guy you think you need to be. The warehouse fell silent as Vince struggled with the choice before him. Years of anger and bitterness warred with the simple truth reflected in his nephew's eyes. Nathan recognized the battle. He'd seen it in himself after difficult missions, after losses that seemed too heavy to bear. Finally, Vince spoke, his voice rough with emotion. Tommy, I'm sorry. This isn't what your mom would have wanted for you. The boy's response was to cross the space between them and hug his uncle. The simple gesture broke something in Vince that threats and confrontations never could. His arms went around Tommy, and for a moment he wasn't a gang leader or a bitter ex-soldier. He was just a man trying to protect the only family he had left. We'll take him back, Nathan said quietly. Together. Show the group home that you're trying to make things right. Snake stepped forward. Boss, what about the operation? The other crews are already on their way. Vince looked at the maps on the wall, at the carefully planned campaign of intimidation and control. Then he looked at Tommy, and Nathan saw the decision form in his eyes. Call them off, Vince ordered. All of them. This ends now. The relief in the warehouse was palpable. Bikers began making calls, sending messages, standing down forces that had been gathering for a show of strength that would now never happen. As they prepared to leave, Vince turned to Nathan. "Your boys stand. Tell him I'm sorry. For everything." "Tell him yourself," Nathan replied. "When you're ready. Show him and Tommy both that change is possible. That strength isn't about making others afraid. It's about having the courage to face your own fears." The ride to the group home was quiet, each man lost in his thoughts. Tommy sat behind his uncle on the motorcycle, arms wrapped around him, in a gesture that was part trust, part forgiveness. Nathan followed in his truck, watching for any signs of Vince changing his mind, but seeing only resolution in his former teammate's posture. At the group home, Vince did something that surprised Nathan. He told the complete truth about taking Tommy, about his past mistakes, about his desire to change. The staff were understandably skeptical, but something in his honesty, in Tommy's quiet support, made them listen. "I want to do this right," Vince said. "Whatever it takes, counseling, supervised visits, anything. I want to be the uncle he deserves." Later, as Nathan prepared to leave, Vince stopped him. "Williams, thank you. For not giving up on Tommy. For seeing what I couldn't." "We all need help sometimes," Nathan replied. "Even SEALs." The drive back to town felt different somehow, as if a weight had lifted from the air itself. Nathan knew there would be challenges ahead, dismantling the protection racket, dealing with legal consequences, rebuilding trust. But the crucial battle, the one for Vince's soul and Tommy's future, had been won not with force but with understanding. Tomorrow he would tell Ethan about what happened, about how sometimes the biggest victories come not from defeating an enemy, but from helping them find their way back to themselves. About how true strength often lies not in standing against others, but in standing with them as they fight their own inner battles. The lemonade stand would be safe now, not because of security measures or community watches, but because Vince had remembered who he used to be, a protector, not a destroyer. A man who understood that real power comes not from making others fear you, but from helping them believe in something better. The midnight air crackled with tension as headlights cut through the darkness of Main Street. Despite Vince's orders to stand down, a splinter group of bikers had decided to make one final statement. Led by Snake, who had quietly harbored resentment over Vince's surrender, 6 motorcycles approached Ethan's lemonade stand with destructive intent. Nathan watched from his concealed position, having anticipated this possibility. His years of SEAL training had taught him that not everyone accepts when a battle is over. Some fight hardest when they have nothing left to lose. Through his tactical radio, he heard Officer Thompson's quiet confirmation that police units were in position, waiting for his signal. The bikers moved with military precision, their actions betraying professional training. Snake had clearly chosen his crew carefully, all former service members, all with something to prove. They killed their engines a block away, pushing their bikes the rest of the distance to maintain stealth. "Target in sight," Snake's voice carried in the still night air. "Williams thinks it's over. Time to show him what happens to people who destroy everything we built." Nathan's hand tightened on his radio as he observed their approach. The past week had been deceptively quiet following Vince's surrender. Too quiet. He'd known something was coming. The way certain bikers had lingered in town, the whispered conversations, the growing tension. The first sign of trouble came from Sarah's security system, deliberately left active as bait. An alarm blared briefly before being silenced, drawing the bikers' attention exactly where Nathan wanted it. They moved toward the sound, weapons ready, falling perfectly into position. "Now," Nathan whispered into his radio. Instantly, powerful floodlights blazed to life from strategic positions around the street. The bikers found themselves caught in multiple crossing beams, temporarily blinded and disoriented. Nathan moved fast, his movements precise and practiced. Years of special operations experience guided every step as he disabled the first 2 bikes, using simple mechanical tricks to render them useless. The bikers wouldn't be leaving on their motorcycles tonight. "What the hell?" Snake spun around trying to locate the threat. His crew scattered for cover, but Nathan had chosen the battlefield carefully. Every hiding spot had been anticipated, every escape route calculated. "It's over, Snake." Nathan's voice carried clearly in the artificial daylight. Vince gave the order. "The war's done." Vince got soft, Snake snarled back. "Lost his nerve when that kid showed up. But some of us still remember what we're fighting for." "And what's that?" Nathan moved through the shadows, his position impossible to pin down. "Fear? Control? Is that what you served for?" One of the bikers made a break for it, running straight into Officer Thompson's waiting officers. The man went down hard, cursing as handcuffs clicked into place. The others realized they were surrounded, trapped in a net of their own making. Snake proved more resilient. He pulled a heavy wrench from his jacket, stalking toward the lemonade stand. "You want to play games, Williams? Let's play. Your boy rebuilt once. Think he can do it again after I'm done?" The security cameras caught every moment as Snake approached the stand, his intent clear in every movement. But Nathan had prepared for this too. The stand before them was a decoy, a perfect replica built to draw exactly this kind of attack. "Last chance," Nathan called out. "Walk away. There's been enough destruction." Snake's response was to swing the wrench at the stand's support beam. The impact echoed through the quiet street, but instead of splintering wood, he hit reinforced steel. The shock of the blow traveled up his arm, causing him to drop the wrench with a curse. Nathan emerged from the shadows, his stance relaxed but ready. "You're fighting a ghost, Snake. The stand you're trying to destroy? It's not even real, just like the power you think you're protecting." More police units appeared, their lights adding to the illumination. Snake's remaining crew members, seeing the situation was hopeless, began laying down their weapons. But Snake himself wasn't finished. "You think this is over?" He pulled a small device from his vest. "Dead man's switch. Either I walk away, or the real stand goes up in flames. Had my boys wire it earlier today while everyone was distracted." Nathan's expression didn't change, but inwardly he smiled. They'd anticipated this too. Ethan's actual stand had been relocated hours ago, replaced by the decoy. But Snake didn't need to know that yet. "Think about what you're doing," Nathan said calmly. "Property destruction, attempted arson, conspiracy. Those are serious charges. Your military record won't help you this time." "Military record?" Snake laughed bitterly. "What do I care about that? Vince promised us something better than following orders, something real, and you took that away. Vince promised you power through fear. But fear only works until someone stands up to it. Look around, Snake. Look how many people are standing up now." He was right. Lights were coming on in buildings all along Main Street. Store owners and residents emerged onto their porches and fire escapes, witnesses to the final act of a drama that had held their town hostage for too long. "They're not standing with you," Snake insisted, his finger tightening on the switch. "They're hiding behind you like always, letting others fight their battles." A new voice cut through the tension. "No, they're showing you what real strength looks like." Vince stepped into the light, Tommy safely back at the group home, but his influence clearly visible in his uncle's transformed demeanor. He approached Snake slowly, hands open and empty. "I was wrong," Vince continued. "About everything. Strength isn't about making people fear you. It's about having the courage to admit when you've lost your way." Snake's hand trembled on the switch. "You taught us to never back down, to hit harder than they hit us." "I taught you what I thought I needed to believe," Vince replied. "But I was just running from my own failures, from Kandahar, from my sister's death, from everything I couldn't control." Nathan watched the exchange carefully, ready to move if needed. But he recognized what was happening, the same transformation he'd witnessed in the warehouse, spreading now to those who had followed Vince's twisted vision. "The switch isn't connected to anything," Vince added quietly. "Williams and his people found the explosives hours ago. It's over, Snake. Has been for a while. We just couldn't see it." The revelation seemed to break something in Snake. The device fell from his numb fingers as the fight drained out of him. Police moved in smoothly, securing him and the remaining bikers without resistance. As Officer Thompson supervised the arrests, Nathan approached Vince. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Heard chatter about Snake's plan," Vince replied. "Figured I owed you one." Or 100. He looked at the decoy stand, then at the watching crowd. Your boy around? Safe at home. Sarah's watching him. Vince nodded. Good. He's got something I wish I could give Tommy. A father who shows him the right way to be strong. The police began processing the scene, collecting evidence and taking statements. The gathered crowd slowly dispersed, their presence having made a silent but powerful statement about community solidarity. What happens now? Nathan asked as the last of the bikers was led away. I'm turning state's evidence, Vince replied, trading information about operations in other counties for consideration in Tommy's custody case. It's not much, but it's a start. It's more than that, Nathan said. It's showing Tommy that it's never too late to choose a different path. As dawn approached, the cleanup began. The decoy stand was dismantled. The real one would return tomorrow. Main Street slowly returned to normal, though something fundamental had changed. The fear that had gripped the town for so long had been replaced by something stronger, a sense of community, of shared victory. Nathan drove home as the sun began to rise, his tactical mind already shifting from combat to reconstruction. There would be work to do, helping businesses recover, rebuilding trust, ensuring nothing like this could take root again. He found Ethan awake and waiting, too excited to sleep after Sarah had called with updates throughout the night. His son's first question caught him by surprise. Is Snake going to be okay? The question reflected something Nathan had always admired about his son, his capacity for empathy, even toward those who had tried to harm him. He's got a long road ahead, Nathan answered honestly. Like Vince, he needs to figure out who he is without anger driving him. Ethan nodded thoughtfully. Maybe when he does, he can try some Phoenix Rising lemonade. You always say that's sweet. Things taste better after bitter times. The wisdom in his son's words struck Nathan deeply. Throughout this entire ordeal, Ethan had maintained his fundamental kindness, his belief in the good in people. It was a strength greater than any show of force. Later that morning, they reopened the stand together. The real one, now returned, to its rightful place. Customers flocked to it, not just for lemonade, but to show their support, to be part of something positive after so much negativity. Mrs. Thompson brought fresh-baked cookies. Mr. Wilson installed a proper security system, though they likely wouldn't need it anymore. Officer Thompson stopped by to report that Snake and his crew were cooperating with authorities, starting their own journey toward redemption. Vince made a brief appearance, standing awkwardly before the stand until Ethan broke the tension in his own unique way. Would you like to try our Phoenix Rising lemonade? Dad says it's about getting back up when life knocks you down. The former gang leader accepted the cup with shaking hands, taking a careful sip. It's good, he said softly. Sweet, but with strength underneath, like someone else I know. He left a $100 bill in the tip jar and walked away, his shoulders straighter, his path clearer. Nathan watched him go, remembering their days in service together, seeing glimpses of the good man who had lost his way, but might find it again. As the day progressed, Nathan observed his son working the stand with his usual enthusiasm. The recent events had changed him, but not in the ways the bikers had intended. Instead of learning fear, he had learned courage. Instead of becoming hardened, he had grown more compassionate. The final pieces of evidence were collected, statements taken, charges filed. The legal system would handle the aftermath, but the real healing had already begun. It showed in the way people lingered at the stand, sharing stories and support, in the way former victims of the gang's intimidation began planning to rebuild and expand their businesses. Nathan's phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Intel confirms all out-of-state crews have withdrawn. Vince's testimony is already paying dividends. You did good, brother. But watching Ethan serve his customers with a smile, Nathan knew the Hayu. Real victory wasn't in the battles won or the enemies defeated. It was in the simple triumph of kindness over cruelty, of community over intimidation, of a boy who believed in making the world a little sweeter, one cup of lemonade at a time. The lessons learned would linger long after the events faded into memory, about strength and weakness, about fear and courage, about the power of standing together against those who would rule through intimidation, but mostly about how the smallest acts of kindness could overcome the grandest displays of force. Ethan's stand had become more than a business. It was a symbol of resilience, of community, of the unshakable spirit that refuses to be cowed by threats or violence. And in the end, that spirit had proven stronger than any gang, any fear, any attempt to destroy it. The summer sun beat down on Main Street, but its warmth felt different now, cleansing, renewing. Like the phoenix rising from ashes, the town had emerged stronger, more united, more determined to protect the simple goodness represented by a boy and his lemonade stand. The morning sun painted Main Street in shades of gold as Ethan prepared his lemonade stand for another day. 2 weeks had passed since the final confrontation, and the town had settled into a new rhythm. The stand, now a symbol of community resilience, drew people from all over the county, each seeking not just refreshment, but connection to something greater than themselves. "Special delivery," Mrs. Thompson called out, approaching with a basket of fresh-baked cookies. Their aroma mixed with the citrus scent of fresh lemons, creating an inviting atmosphere that had become the stand's signature. "These are for your community appreciation event today." Ethan grinned as he arranged the cookies on a display plate. The event had been his idea, a way to thank everyone who had stood by them during the difficult times. "Thanks, Mrs. Thompson. Dad says the whole town's planning to come." Nathan watched from nearby, pride mixing with lingering protectiveness as he observed his son. The morning paper in his hands carried the headline, "Local gang members accept plea deal," but his attention remained focused on Ethan's preparations. "Everything looks great, buddy," he said, helping to set up the new awning, a gift from Mr. Wilson's hardware store. "Remember what we talked about regarding crowd management? Keep the lines organized, watch my supply levels, and make sure everyone feels welcome," Ethan recited, carefully arranging his specialty flavors. The Phoenix Rising lemonade now held the center spot, its story printed on a small card beside the dispenser. The first customers began arriving early, eager to be part of the special day. Jenny Parker and her family brought homemade signs celebrating the stand's resilience. Officer Thompson stopped by in his patrol car, lights flashing briefly in a show of support that made Ethan beam with pride. Sarah arrived with unexpected news. "Just heard from my contact at the courthouse," she told Nathan quietly. "Vince's cooperation led to major breaks in cases across 3 states. They're considering it in his custody hearing for Tommy." Nathan nodded, watching as more people gathered around the stand. "How's Tommy doing?" "Better. The group home reports that Vince's weekly visits are going well. He's showing up consistently, following all the rules. They say Tommy smiles more now." The conversation paused as a familiar figure approached the stand. Vince, dressed in civilian clothes instead of his leather vest, stood awkwardly in line. The crowd parted slightly, uncertain how to react, but Ethan's warm greeting set the tone. "Welcome to Fresh Squeezed Dreams," he said, his voice carrying the same friendly tone he used with every customer. "Would you like to try our Phoenix Rising lemonade? It's about rising above challenges and making something good from difficult times." Vince's voice was rough with emotion as he replied, "I'd like that, Ethan. Thank you." He placed a $100 bill in the tip jar, adding quietly, "Tommy asked me to tell you hello. He's doing better now." The exchange seemed to break some invisible barrier. Other customers began engaging with Vince, not with fear or anger, but with cautious acceptance. The healing process that had begun with his surrender was continuing, one small interaction at a time. As the morning progressed, Ethan shared the story behind each of his special flavors. The Phoenix Rising remained the most popular, but he had created others inspired by recent events. Community Sunrise, with hints of orange and hope. Friendship Fusion, blending unexpected flavors that worked perfectly together. And Peace Punch, a soothing combination that he claimed helped people remember to be kind. Nathan received a text from Marcus. "Final reports in. All gang operations in the region have been dismantled. Your boy's stand started a chain reaction. Sometimes the smallest things make the biggest differences. The message brought a smile to Nathan's face as he watched Ethan interact with his customers. His son had grown through this experience, not in the way violence intended, but in his capacity for understanding and forgiveness. Mr. Peterson from the bank arrived with news that the business district was thriving. "Your stand inspired others to stand up to intimidation," he told Ethan. "Now we're seeing new shops opening, old ones expanding. The town's never been stronger." The event reached its peak around noon when Mayor Anderson made an unexpected appearance. She presented Ethan with a certificate of appreciation, recognizing his contribution to community spirit and resilience in the face of adversity. "Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do," she announced to the gathered crowd, "is to keep making something sweet in a world that can be bitter." This young man and his father taught us that lesson. Ethan accepted the certificate with characteristic humility, immediately turning to thank his supporters. "This belongs to everyone," he said, his young voice clear and confident. "To Mrs. Thompson for her cookies, to Mr. Wilson for helping us rebuild, to Officer Thompson for keeping us safe, to Sarah for watching out for us, and to everyone who showed us that good people are stronger than fear." The crowd's applause was interrupted by another arrival. Tommy, accompanied by his caseworker, had come to see the stand that had played such a pivotal role in his uncle's transformation. The boy seemed shy but curious, studying the setup with obvious interest. "Would you like to learn how to make lemonade?" Ethan offered, demonstrating the same kindness that had helped change his former enemies. "I could teach you my special recipes." Tommy's face lit up, looking to his caseworker for permission. She nodded, smiling at this unexpected moment of healing. As the two boys worked together behind the stand, Nathan and Vince watched from a respectful distance. "He's a good kid," Vince said quietly. "Reminds me of Tommy at that age before everything went wrong." "It's not too late," Nathan replied. "Tommy needs his uncle, the real you, not the person you thought you had to become." The afternoon brought more moments of reconciliation. Some of Snake's former crew, now in a rehabilitation program, sent a letter of apology that Ethan insisted on displaying. "Everyone deserves a chance to change," he explained to customers who asked about it. Sarah's brother Jeff arrived from the lumber yard with an unexpected gift: materials for expanding the stand. "Town council approved a permanent structure," he announced, "complete with storage and a small seating area. They're calling it the Community Corner." As the day began to wind down, Nathan noticed Ethan sitting with Tommy, teaching him the proper way to squeeze lemons for maximum juice. The sight stirred something in his heart, the simple act of making lemonade helping to heal wounds that violence had created. "Dad," Ethan called out, "can Tommy come back sometimes? I could teach him about running a business and maybe he could help me create new flavors." The request reflected everything Nathan had hoped his son would learn from their ordeal. Not fear or suspicion, but the capacity to see beyond past hurts to future possibilities. "If it's okay with his caseworker and uncle," Nathan replied, watching Vince's expression soften at being included in the decision. The caseworker nodded approvingly. "I think that would be wonderful. Part of recovery is building new, healthy connections." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across Main Street, the community appreciation event wound down naturally. Customers lingered, sharing stories and hopes for the future. The stand had become more than a business. It was a gathering place, a symbol of resilience, a reminder that sweetness could emerge from bitter times. Nathan helped Ethan clean up, their practiced routine now including Tommy's eager assistance. The boys' presence represented everything they had fought for, not just the defeat of intimidation, but the possibility of redemption and renewal. "Dad," Ethan asked as they packed away the last supplies, "do you think everything's really going to be okay now?" Nathan considered the question carefully. "Life always has challenges, buddy, but when we face them together, when we remember to add a little sweetness to bitter times, we usually find the strength we need." The final customers departed, leaving behind a town forever changed, not just by the absence of fear, but by the presence of something stronger, a community that had learned to stand together, to believe in the power of small kindnesses, to trust that good people could overcome intimidation with unity and hope. As they drove home in the gathering dusk, Ethan clutched his appreciation certificate while excitedly discussing plans for the stand's expansion. Nathan listened, grateful for his son's unshakable spirit and the wisdom that had emerged from their challenges. The evening settled over their town, bringing with it a peace that felt both earned and fragile. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for growth and healing. But they would face them together, armed with the lessons learned from a summer when a simple lemonade stand had helped a community find its courage, and a father and son had discovered that the sweetest victories often come from simply refusing to let bitterness win. Officer Thompson's patrol car passed by, its presence now comforting rather than necessary. In the distance, a single motorcycle rumbled, no longer a sound of menace but just another part of their town's evening symphony. The fear that had gripped their community had been replaced by something stronger, the knowledge that together they could overcome any challenge that came their way. The lights of home beckoned ahead, promising rest after a day of celebration and reflection. Ethan had already begun sketching ideas for new flavors in his recipe book, his creativity undimmed by the challenges they'd faced. Nathan watched his son's enthusiasm with pride, knowing that the true measure of their victory wasn't in battles won, but in spirits unbroken and hearts still open to making the world a little sweeter, one cup of lemonade at a time. The day of Fresh Squeezed Dreams' grand reopening dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for what had become the most anticipated community event of the summer. Ethan had spent weeks planning every detail, determined to make this celebration special for everyone who had supported them through the difficult times. Dawn found him already at work, carefully arranging his expanded selection of offerings. Besides his signature lemonades, he'd added Mrs. Baker's blueberry muffins, special edition Unity cookies from Mrs. Thompson, and commemorative cups designed by Jenny Parker's family's print shop. Each item represented a piece of the community that had come together to protect something bigger than just a lemonade stand. "Looking sharp, buddy," Nathan said, helping to set up the new portable awnings that would provide shade for the gathered crowd. His practiced eye noted the security measures that remained in place, not out of fear now, but as a reminder of lessons learned. "Need any help with the special menu board?" Ethan stood back, surveying his work with critical attention. The large chalkboard displayed not just prices and flavors, but short stories about each item's origin. "Phoenix Rising Lemonade, because every setback is a chance to soar higher," read one entry. "Community Sunrise Blend, brightening our town one cup at a time," declared another. "I think it's perfect, Dad," Ethan replied, adjusting his special event apron, a gift from Sarah, emblazoned with Chief Dreams Officer in bright letters. "Do you think Tommy will really come?" His caseworker confirmed it this morning. Vince is bringing him as part of their supervised visiting time. Nathan watched his son's face light up at the news. The friendship developing between Ethan and Tommy had become an unexpected symbol of healing for the whole town. The first guests began arriving well before the official start time. Mr. Wilson from the hardware store brought his entire family, including his grandson, who proudly carried a handmade sign reading, "Lemons to Lemonade, Fear to Friendship." The local newspaper sent a photographer to document what they were calling a celebration of community spirit. Officer Thompson arrived early to help with crowd management, though his presence was more ceremonial than necessary now. "Just got word from the station," he told Nathan quietly. "The last of Snake's crew took their plea deals. It's really over." Sarah appeared with an unexpected addition to the celebration, a display board featuring photographs of the stand's journey, from its humble beginnings through the rebuilding and into its current incarnation. "The Historical Society wants to preserve the story," she explained. "They say it's an important part of our town's history now." As the morning progressed, the crowd grew steadily. Mrs. Baker's granddaughter Emma had set up a face painting station next to the stand, decorating children's cheeks with lemons, stars, and other cheerful designs. The local music school provided a small ensemble, their gentle tunes adding to the festive atmosphere. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd as Vince arrived with Tommy. The former gang leader looked different in civilian clothes, his usual, intimidating presence replaced by an almost hesitant demeanor. Tommy, however, rushed forward eagerly to greet Ethan. "Is it really okay if I help today?" the boy asked, eyeing the professional setup with obvious admiration. "Of course." Ethan handed him a spare apron. "I'll teach you all my special recipes. Dad says sharing knowledge is how we make the whole community stronger." The sight of the two boys working together behind the stand created a powerful image of reconciliation. Vince watched from a respectful distance, his expression a mix of regret and hope, while Nathan kept a protective but encouraging eye on the proceedings. Mayor Anderson arrived mid-morning, bringing news that would change everything. "The town council has unanimously approved the Community Corner project," she announced to the gathered crowd. Fresh Squeezed Dreams will be the centerpiece of a new gathering space, complete with seating areas, green space, and room for other young entrepreneurs to set up their own stands. The announcement was met with enthusiastic applause. Ethan's success had inspired other kids in town to start their own small businesses, from craft sales to pet sitting services. The Community Corner would give them all a safe, supported space to grow their dreams. "And that's not all," the mayor continued, gesturing to Mr. Peterson from the bank. "The Business Association has created a Young Entrepreneurs Mentorship Program, with Ethan as our first success story. His stand will serve as a training ground for other kids who want to learn about running a business." Tommy's eyes lit up at this news. Could I be part of that?" he asked hesitantly, looking between his uncle and the mayor. "Of course you can," Ethan answered before anyone else could respond. "You're already learning the recipes. And you have great ideas. That suggestion about adding mint to the community sunrise blend was brilliant." The caseworker, observing from nearby, made notes on her clipboard with an approving smile. These kinds of positive interactions and community connections were exactly what she'd been hoping to see in Vince and Tommy's case. As the day progressed, more surprises unfolded. The local tech school had developed a mobile app for Fresh Squeezed Dreams, allowing customers to pre-order drinks for pickup. Jenny Parker's brother demonstrated the app's features, showing how it included not just the menu, but also the story behind each flavor and the stand's history. Sarah's brother Jeff unveiled architectural drawings for the permanent stand that would anchor the Community Corner. The design incorporated elements suggested by customers: a covered seating area, a story wall sharing the stand's history, and space for community announcements. "We're calling it the Dream Corner," Jeff explained, pointing out features in the plans. "The idea is that it's not just about lemonade anymore, it's about showing kids that their dreams matter, that the community will support them." Vince, who had been quietly observing everything, finally approached Nathan. "I've been cleared to start supervised work programs," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Thought maybe I could help with the construction. Try to build something up for a change, instead of tearing things down." Nathan considered the offer, seeing the genuine desire for redemption in his former adversary's eyes. "I think that could work. The Community Corner is about second chances after all." The afternoon brought more celebrations. Mrs. Thompson unveiled a commemorative cookbook featuring recipes from community members, including Ethan's special lemonade blends. The proceeds would go to a new fund supporting young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. Tommy proved to be a natural at customer service, his shy smile winning over even the most hesitant patrons. Working alongside Ethan, he seemed to bloom, showing glimpses of the confident young man he could become with the right support and guidance. "You're really good at this," Ethan told him during a quiet moment. "Maybe when the Community Corner opens, you could have your own section. We could be business partners." The suggestion brought tears to Vince's eyes as he overheard it. The caseworker patted his arm encouragingly. "This is exactly the kind of positive influence and opportunity we've been hoping to see for Tommy," she said quietly. As the sun began to set, the celebration took on a more reflective tone. Officer Thompson organized a brief ceremony honoring those who had stood up against intimidation. Small business owners who had resisted the gang's demands shared their stories, each one ending with praise for the example set by a young boy and his lemonade stand. "It wasn't just about not giving in to threats," Mrs. Baker explained to the crowd. "It was about believing that goodness is stronger than fear, that community is more powerful than intimidation. Ethan and his stand showed us that. The evening concluded with a surprise organized by the local fire department. As darkness fell, they created a safe zone for families to enjoy sparklers, points of light pushing back the darkness. Just as the community had pushed back against fear, Ethan and Tommy handed out the sparklers together, their young faces illuminated by the dancing lights. The sight of them working in harmony, surrounded by the community they had helped unite, created a powerful image of hope and renewal. "Dad?" Ethan asked as they began cleaning up after the last guests had left. "Do you think things will stay this good?" Nathan watched as Vince helped Tommy collect empty cups, the two of them working, together with newfound purpose. "I think, buddy, that good things stay good when people work to keep them that way. Like your stand, it's not just about making lemonade anymore, it's about keeping hope alive." The caseworker approached with positive news. "This event will definitely help Vince's case for increased visitation rights," she said. "The court looks favorably on community involvement and positive activities like this." As the cleanup continued, plans were already being made for future events. The community corner would host weekly young entrepreneur markets. Ethan's stand would offer business classes for kids. Tommy would become a regular fixture, learning alongside his new friend while building stronger bonds with his uncle. Mr. Peterson pulled Nathan aside with one final piece of news. "The Business Association wants to create a scholarship fund," he explained. "The Fresh Squeeze Dream Scholarship for young entrepreneurs. We'd like Ethan to help design the criteria." The day's events had transformed Main Street into something more than just a business district. It had become a testament to the power of community, to the possibility of redemption, to the strength that comes from standing together against fear. As they packed the last supplies into their truck, Ethan and Tommy made plans for their next collaboration. The boys' friendship, born from conflict but blooming in peace, represented everything the community had fought to protect. The simple human connections that give life its sweetness. Nathan watched his son say goodbye to his new friend, saw the way Vince carefully guided Tommy toward their car, noted how Officer Thompson's patrol car drove past with a friendly wave rather than a watchful eye. The changes were subtle but profound, like ripples spreading from a single drop of kindness in a wide pond. The stars emerged above Main Street as the last participants headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for growth and learning. But the lessons of the lemonade stand would remain. That courage is contagious, that friendship can bloom in unlikely places, and that sometimes the sweetest victories come not from defeating an enemy, but from transforming them into friends. Ethan's voice carried across the quiet street as they prepared to leave. "Same time tomorrow, Tommy? I want to teach you my secret ingredient for the Phoenix Rising blend." The simple question held so much promise. For friendship, for healing, for a future where children could dream without fear. Nathan started the truck, glancing at his son's tired but happy face in the rearview mirror. The stand had started as a simple summer project, but it had grown into something far more valuable. A reminder that even in the darkest times, hope rises, community endures, and dreams find a way to take flight. The autumn breeze carried hints of change as Nathan stood beside Fresh Squeeze Dream's new permanent location in the community corner. 3 months had passed since the grand reopening celebration, and the transformation of both the stand and the community continued to amaze him. The simple wooden structure where Ethan had first started selling lemonade had evolved into something far more meaningful, a symbol of resilience, hope, and the power of community. Ethan wheeled his new bike to the stand's entrance, its blue, paint and silver stripes gleaming in the morning sun. The bike represented more than just achieved savings goals. It was a testament to perseverance in the face of adversity. Tommy followed close behind on his own bicycle, a gift from the community after Vince had suggested that his nephew needed a way to travel to his new job as Ethan's official business partner. "Ready for the fall menu launch?" Ethan asked, securing his bike on the new rack installed by Mr. Wilson. The stand's offerings had expanded with the seasons, now featuring hot beverages alongside the signature lemonades. "Dad helped me perfect the spiced apple cider recipe last night." Nathan watched the boys prepare for opening, their movements showing the easy rhythm of friendship and shared purpose. The transformation in Tommy over the past months had been remarkable. Working at the stand gave him structure, purpose, and most importantly, a sense of belonging that had been missing from his life. The morning delivery from Mrs. Thompson just arrived, Sarah called out, carrying a box of fresh-baked goods. Her relationship with Nathan had deepened over the months, moving from friendship to something more. Her steady presence had helped heal old wounds, bringing warmth back into their lives. The installation of the commemorative plaque drew Nathan's attention. Mounted on the corner of the new structure, it read, "Fresh Squeezed Dreams. Where community. Spirit conquered fear." Below the text was an etching of the original stand, preserved as a reminder of where their journey had begun. Officer Thompson pulled up in his patrol car, but instead of performing a security check, he was dropping off his daughter for the Young Entrepreneurs Mentoring Session. The weekly classes, led by Ethan and supported by local business owners, had become increasingly popular among the town's youth. "Big crowd expected today," the officer mentioned, helping unload supplies. "Word about your program spreading to neighboring towns. The mayor's office got 3 calls this week asking how to start something similar." The success of Fresh Squeezed Dreams had indeed rippled outward. The community corner now hosted a rotating selection of youth-run businesses, from craft stands to tech repair services. Each young entrepreneur received mentoring, support, and a safe space to grow their dreams. Vince arrived mid-morning, now a regular sight in his role as maintenance supervisor for the community corner. His work program had evolved into a full-time position, overseeing the upkeep of the growing community space. The change in him was as profound as the physical changes to the area, his former intimidating presence replaced by quiet competence and gentle guidance. "Tommy's custody hearing is next week," he told Nathan quietly, watching his nephew help Ethan set up the day's special display. "The judge has been receiving letters of support from the community. Even Officer Thompson wrote one." Nathan nodded, understanding the weight of this moment. The stand's records show Tommy's been here every scheduled day, always on time. Sarah compiled all the parent feedback from the mentoring program, too. It all helps build your case. The morning progressed steadily, with regular customers mixing with curious visitors from neighboring towns. Each sale now included a story, not just about the stand's flavors, but about the community that had come together to protect something precious. A surprise visitor arrived before lunch, Nathan's former SEAL commander, drawn by reports of how a small-town lemonade stand had helped dismantle a regional crime network. The commander observed the operation with approval, particularly noting how military principles of teamwork and resilience had been adapted to build something positive. "You've done good work here, Williams," the commander said, accepting a cup of the signature Phoenix Rising blend. "Different kind of victory than what we trained for, but maybe more important in the long run." The commander's visit prompted Nathan to reflect on how far they'd come. The skills he'd learned as a SEAL, leadership, strategic thinking, crisis management, had found new purpose in protecting and nurturing his son's dreams. The battle for the lemonade stand had been won not with force, but with community, courage, and unwavering kindness. Mid-afternoon brought a group of students from the local journalism class, working on a documentary about the stand's impact on the community. They interviewed Ethan about his experience, capturing his natural enthusiasm as he explained how adversity had only strengthened his determination to succeed. "The most important thing I learned," Ethan told them, "is that you can't let fear stop you from doing what's right. And when you stay strong, you find out how many people are willing to stand with you." Tommy added his own perspective to the interview, describing how the stand had given him a new vision of what was possible in life. His words carried weight, especially when he spoke about his uncle's transformation. "People can change," he said, with conviction. "Sometimes they just need to see that there's a better way." The documentary team captured footage of the community corner in full swing, young entrepreneurs learning from each other, community members gathering to share stories and support, and the constant flow of customers drawn by more than just the products being sold. As afternoon shadows lengthened, Sarah approached Nathan with news from her latest community council meeting. "They've approved the expansion," she said excitedly. "The Fresh Squeeze Dream Scholarship Fund will cover summer business camps for kids from low-income families. The first session starts next June." This development represented everything they'd fought for, creating opportunities for more children to pursue their dreams without fear of failure or financial constraints. The stand that had started as a simple summer project had grown into a catalyst for community-wide change. Vince received a call that brought tears to his eyes. The custody court had reviewed his case file's latest additions, the steady employment, records, community support letters, and Tommy's obvious improvement, and had scheduled an early hearing. The possibility of increased custody rights, once seemingly impossible, now felt within reach. "Never thought selling lemonade could change lives," he said, watching Tommy confidently handle a rush of customers. "Guess sometimes the sweetest victories come from the most unexpected places." The afternoon brought another surprise as a letter arrived from Snake, written from the rehabilitation program he'd entered after his arrest. He expressed genuine remorse for his actions and shared how the stand's story had inspired him to seek a different path. The letter would join others on the stand's wall of hope, where messages of transformation and healing were displayed. As evening approached, the stand hosted its weekly Young Entrepreneurs Showcase. New businesses presented their ideas to the community, each one carrying forward the spirit of resilience and innovation that Fresh Squeezed Dreams had come to represent. Nathan watched Ethan and Tommy mentor younger children, teaching them not just about business basics, but about courage, integrity, and the importance of community. His son had grown not just as an entrepreneur, but as a leader and role model. The setting sun painted the community corner in warm hues as the day's activities wound down. Regular customers lingered, sharing stories and plans for future projects. The space had become more than just a business district. It was the heart of a community that had learned valuable lessons about standing together against intimidation. Sarah joined Nathan as he helped the boys clean up. Their relationship had blossomed naturally, built on shared values and a commitment to nurturing the community they'd helped protect. Her presence added another layer of healing to their family's story. "Dad," Ethan called out, holding up his recipe book. "Tommy and I created a new flavor for the custody hearing next week. We're calling it Family Bonds. It's sweet but strong, like the ties that keep us together." The simple statement carried profound meaning, reflecting how the stand had become a place where broken bonds could be mended and new connections forged. Every cup of lemonade served was a reminder that sweetness could emerge from life's sourest moments. As they prepared to close for the day, Nathan received a final piece of news. The State Business Association had chosen Fresh Squeeze Dreams as a model for their new youth entrepreneurship initiative. The program would help other communities create similar safe spaces for young people to pursue their dreams. The boys made plans for tomorrow as they stored supplies and counted the day's earnings. Their friendship, born from conflict but nurtured by understanding, demonstrated the transformative power of giving people second chances. "Sometimes I think about how different things could have been," Tommy said quietly as they locked up. "If the stand had closed, if Uncle Vince hadn't changed, if the community hadn't stood together." "But it didn't happen that way," Ethan replied, with characteristic optimism. "Dad says the best victories are the ones that make everyone stronger, not just the winners." Nathan smiled at his son's words, recognizing the wisdom that had emerged from their challenges. The stand had become more than a business. It was a testament to the power of unwavering hope, of community courage, of the simple truth that kindness could overcome fear. As they drove home through the quiet streets, Nathan reflected on their journey. The lemonade stand had started as Ethan's dream of earning money for a bike, but it had grown into something far more valuable, a symbol of resilience, a catalyst for change, a reminder that the strongest communities are built not on fear, but on trust, support, and the courage to stand together. The autumn stars emerged above them, witnessing the continued transformation of a town that had learned to rise above intimidation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but they would face them together, armed with the knowledge that even the smallest stand for what's right could create ripples of positive change that touched countless lives. fresh squeezed. Dreams would continue to serve more than just lemonade. It would serve hope, inspiration, and the sweet taste of dreams made real through courage, community, and unwavering kindness.